Hey there, thanks for listening. You are listening to Incorruptible Massachusetts, where we help you understand state politics. We talk about why it's so broken, what we could have here in Massachusetts if we fixed it, and how you can get involved. And today we are excited to have the amazing, the fantastic Heather May with us, who is a candidate for state rep. Before we intro her, I will go ahead and have Jordan introduce himself.
My name is Jordan Berg Powers, and you see him, and I've have several years' experience in political campaigns in Massachusetts.
Anna Callahan, coming at you from Medford. Her ran for state rep, have been doing a lot of state politics stuff, and loving it. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, Heather May, wouldn't you tell us a little bit about where you're running for state rep and why you're running?
Sure. I'm Heather May, she, her, hers, and thank you, Anna and Jordan and Incorruptible Mass for having me. I am running for state representative in the 9th Middlesex, which is most of Waltham, not all of Waltham, but most of Waltham. And, you know, I'm running during the pandemic. I saw so many local families who were really struggling. And I remember my own family in 2008. We lost our first business. We almost lost our home. And that was one of the hardest things that I have ever been through. And so to see other families who were struggling in similar ways and who didn't, they didn't have access to resources, and especially at first just didn't have any way to keep their heads above water. And so, I definitely felt like there was a responsibility to help those community members. And I think that Waltham and the 9th Middlesex in general, it's time for us to have some real leadership in the state house. I think we have leadership that has gotten a little bit complacent, who is not supportive of good government and making sure that the public is really well informed about what we're doing at the state level. And we need someone who can advocate and fight for what we need as a district. And, I have a long history as a speech and debate competitor and coach, and a history of organizing with my union at Emerson College. And I just felt like it was time to put those skills to use for the people of Waltham. And so I decided that I would run a primary challenge against our current incumbent Democrat in the 9th Middlesex.
Yes, great. I want to ask you specifically about a little bit more about your background, because I know that you and I have talked about your role in union organizing, and I'd love for you to talk about that.
Sure. So at my institution, where I've been an educator for the last 21 some years, you lose track after a while.
But who's counting?
I started out as an affiliated faculty member and working at several different places and teaching as many classes as I possibly could, and still not really making ends meet. And not having any benefits of any kind. And I know that there are a lot of educators in Massachusetts who live that lifestyle right now. And then I started full-time at Emerson, but it's a non-tenure track position. So it's full-time, and we have, benefits and things like that, but we don't have that path to the job for life, as we call it. And we were also, so they refer to it as term faculty. The term faculty was the only faculty group at Emerson that was not unionized. And what we quickly began to notice was that that meant the exploitation of this particular group of faculty just started, to really snowball, to the point where you had people, myself included, who were teaching double or triple the load of other faculty and making not even half of what they were making. And we didn't have the same benefits. I had my son while we were ununionized at Emerson. And I had 6 weeks of, paid maternity leave. Of course, it wasn't fully paid. It was at 80%, which was okay. But my son was born in August. And really what it meant was that I took 2 days off of work when I had my son, because my 6th week was the first week of classes at Emerson. And 6 weeks is nothing when you've just had a child. So you're barely back to kind of human at that point in time.
Yes.
So all of those things kind of combining, there was this general talk about, well, can we join the full-time union? Do we join the affiliated union? What do we do? And so myself and a couple of others, we got together and we organized the Emerson College advisory chapter of the AAUP, which so basically we weren't technically a union yet, but we had access to the resources and we could start, we were holding meetings and organizing and talking to others about the experiences that they were having. So that process, going from conversations about unionizing to eventually being able to unionize, took about 5 years. And it took a lot of, we had to have one-on-one conversations with faculty, both term faculty and tenured faculty, because they needed to agree to open up their union charter to incorporate us in. And of course, when you do that, there's always a danger, especially at a private institution, that the administration will attempt to just dissolve the union when the charter is opened. So they were nervous, and that makes sense. Absolutely. We would go to meetings and there would be someone from the administration writing down your name as you walked in, just kind of general intimidation. But in truth, it was sort of like, things have gotten so bad here, like, go ahead, write my name down. That's all right. And we did finally get to a place where we felt confident about having a card campaign to do that and to join the full-time faculty or the tenure track faculty union. And 97% of the faculty voted in favor of
that's
doing
amazing.
that. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was, to this day, it's one of the things that I'm the most proud of in my professional life, because it was hard and it was scary. And ultimately we prevailed and we made things better for everyone at Emerson, including the students, when.
I'm always, go ahead, Jordan.
I just want to say, because this is very close to home for me, because my wife is non-tenured at a few places, and she, I think people really don't understand how destabilizing, that's not the right word, lack of stability it is to have this type of lifestyle. So just for people who don't really understand it, so when my wife is no longer at UMass Boston, so I feel okay talking about their horrible practices. So just as an example, she taught a class there. Luckily, she was also had a regular job, but she was, she taught a class there, and she wouldn't know if she was teaching that class 2 weeks, 3 weeks beforehand. Imagine if you didn't know your schedule 2 to 3 weeks beforehand, right? Most people who we're trying to fight for retail workers, for workers to have that type of security. And we think of like universities, like of course those people have those, but they don't. They're treated the same as those employees. She would get, she would have to work, she would have to do 6 classes, 6. For you who maybe remember college or this, imagine taking 6 classes. She would have to grade 6 classes worth of students to earn $30,000 a half a year. So $60,000 a year. She would have to have 12 classes, right? 30 students a piece, all of that work, right? That's to make a living and not guaranteed. So one time, though, actually the time she decided to stop teaching there, they were in a budget crunch, so they just canceled all the classes that they had for adjunct professors, and then they said, "We'll let you know if we bring it back." And then they were just basically like, "Oh, we're not going to bring back your class." I think it was like a week and a half before classes start, and then a week into classes have already started, they realized that her class was a requirement for half of the students. So so they begged her to come a week into classes. They begged her to re-teach her class and to come back to UMass Boston because they needed her class. And she was like, "I'll do it for the students," but this is insane.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's because you have people who don't teach are bureaucrats, right? These are politicians. These are Marty Meehan. What has he ever done? He's never taught a class in his life, right? Like these people are not professionals, right? They don't know what they're doing. They don't have, and they treat these workers like you would treat any sort of disposable. It's the Uberification of our economy. They are treated like Uber workers. It is really just a lack of, it's just a lack of like any concern for the humans that are involved in this process, and it's destabilizing for the students. Like, you're a student. You have to round out what Heather said about the ways it intersects with students. You're a student and you find out a class you need to graduate is canceled. A week and a half, you've signed up for it, you've done all the things, you've paid them money, and you find out that your class that you need to graduate, that's disappeared. And then you make other arrangements, you find another class, you do other things, and then a week after classes started, they go, "Actually, never mind, we got the class back." And now you have a disgruntled person teaching that class who's scrambling to put together a curriculum that was for a class that got canceled, right? And is not mad at you, the student, but is frustrated with this situation. That's bad for everyone involved. And it doesn't need to be this way. And that's why the work that Heather did to create a union, create stabilization. And the thing I always say about it, I think about it is, it creates an adult relationship. These universities, they don't really think of these as people. They don't think of the individual stories, the lives, the families that are connected to all of these workers. And a union creates an adult relationship. It says, "No, you have to see me, you have to treat me like an adult, you have to talk to me, you have to consider what is going on with me when you make decisions, because I'm here as a partner, whether you like it or not," right? It creates an adult relationship with your employer. And so I think that that's really critical. And it makes it better for the university. The university now has more stability. It has students that are happier. It has professors who aren't scrambling to figure out childcare at the last second, or figure out where to go, or all the other things. It creates more stability for the students, more stability for the professors, and it's better for the universities to have that union in place. They just always fight it, which makes no sense to me. Anyway, but I just, that really personal touch, I think it's really important to highlight what Heather has done in terms of the quality of life for students and the people involved.
Yeah, and you said something there, Jordan, about your wife. She said, "I'll do it for the students." And of course, because as educators, they are the most important people in the world to us. And so I think sometimes it is easy for the powers that be to take advantage of educators because we love our students. And that is a horrible exploitation of love. Like, come on.
Yeah, well said.
Politics. Horrible exploitation of love.
There you go. Yes. And it also then, when I think about the things that we've been able to do since we unionized, teachers we're very loyal, and we're loyal to our institutions when they treat us well. And then you can build, I have students, my communications director at the campaign is one of my former students. You know, she was, and I taught her a decade ago, but we had a good relationship. She took a couple of different classes with me. And, you know, those are the things that happen in an education setting. Like, so yeah, like I said, it's one of the things that I'm most proud of. And I think that it's made things a lot better for everyone.
And I know we have a lot of other things that we want to talk about today, but I have to jump on here a little bit because someone who has had the experience of spending 5 years to build unity for a policy goal, right? To build a movement around accomplishing something policy-wise and has succeeded. Like, I have a little background in that too. Like, there was a moment in my life where like I spent years building for this one thing and then we succeeded as a big group of people. And, you know, it stays with you. It really is one of the most fulfilling things that you can do. And when you've seen that success, and this is why we love candidates who are union people, because they have spent this time devoting time to building the actual real people relationships and movement building to accomplish a real goal that helps people, you know, hundreds, thousands of people's lives. And that is something that just, it stays with you for years and years and years, this belief that, yes, I know it's been 1.5 years, I know it's been 2 years, it's going to happen. Don't worry, it's going to happen. And being able to pursue these things for a long period of time is absolutely what we need more of in our candidates and in our elected officials. So, whew,
perseverance.
Perseverance, exactly, against a crazy, ridiculous political system that we have. So, you mentioned in your intro, you talked about believing that Waltham needed someone who was paid more attention to and was really committed to good government and transparency. And I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. One of the things that I think I was sort of most surprised about when I started getting interested in politics at a state level back in 2015 was just the sort of umbrella of darkness that covers our state house. And it's something that I think a lot of us just aren't really aware of until you start kind of peeling back the layers. And so thinking about, transparency and what does transparency mean? Well, simply, it means that there isn't a barrier between you and the thing that you're looking at, right? So things like that committees would take votes within that committee, and we, the people, would never know what that vote was. To me, that is antithetical to democracy. I don't, I just don't see how that works, because it takes all of the accountability away, right? So I can call my state rep as many times as I want. I can write as many letters as I want. They can tell me I'm going to vote this way, and they go into committee and that thing doesn't get favorably reported out of committee. And I'm like, what? Okay. So now I just have to trust that my state rep is doing what they told me they were going to do. And I don't think that politics is a place where I'm just going to put my blind trust into you. I need you to be accountable to me. And so
besides the fact that we know that like bills fail in committees where 2/3 of the people have co-sponsored the bill. So like, we know these things happen, and yet we can't know who it is. We can't know who's voting how. And so you can't hold your own state rep accountable. It's so totally absurd.
Exactly. Yeah. And so to me, that is just simply taking power away from the people. And I wholeheartely believe that that is inherently bad. And I know that there are, people who think, because I'm a leader, because I'm an elected official, like I know better, or I know what's going on. And maybe you do, but you have to talk to your constituents about it. They need to understand why you're doing this or why you're doing that. And if they don't understand, or if you're not willing to tell them, then frankly, I don't think you deserve to be in office. So
It's your job to help them understand first. And second of all,
Exactly.
it's such a talking point that like, oh, you don't understand. Like, oh, only we are sophisticated enough to understand. You're not smart. It's like,
Yeah.
come on, man. It's not like you,
And
just because you're elected, you automatically gain 20 IQ points. Like that didn't happen.
yeah, no, exactly. And it's, for people to, for elected officials to, sort of have this like, well, you just need to trust me kind of mentality. I just don't, maybe it's part of, I was raised by some old school Republicans to kind of have a healthy distrust of people who said, oh, just trust me. They were predominantly farmers, so farmers tend to want to see you put your money where your mouth is.
There you go. Exactly. I was makes me go, we are farmers.
Yeah.
Oh, those jingles that stick with you for like 40 years.
They do.
Oh my God. Well, let's talk a little bit about policy. So talk to us about, we'd love to hear a little bit about housing. We'd love to hear about the environment. We'd love to hear about corporate tax breaks, police, you name it. Like jump in. What do you want to talk about here?
Yeah, well, so I think it's interesting, sort of like we start out the conversation kind of talking about the concept of transparency in our state government and how important it is, because it's one of those things that it affects everything else.
Yeah.
Right. So Waltham, what I've been hearing from people, as I talk to our community members, like many other places, Waltham is becoming increasingly unaffordable to the people that live here, and the people that work here, people who would like to work and live here, and you just can't because it's so expensive. And one of the interesting things I think in Waltham, so I lived in Cambridge and then Somerville and then Medford and now Waltham. And I feel like the affordability has just followed me. So it lets me know what's happening, because there are, families that look a lot like mine, who just keep moving out and out and out as things become unaffordable. And then we displace other people who were here and now they can't afford it. And all anybody wants is stable housing that does not, break their bank, so that they can live in a safe place with good schools and, a grocery store that, is within city limits. Like these are pretty basic things that people want. And in Waltham, while some of those affordability issues kind of happened over a decade, or sort of not necessarily slowly, but in Waltham, it's just in the past 5 to 6 years, like all of a sudden, it's completely unaffordable. Our house that we bought back in 2013 has tripled in value. And I'm like looking around going, huh? Like, how come they're, and
sometimes I think the American dream is more like the American lottery, right? If you're able to do that, then like maybe you'll suddenly have like 4 times as much money. Maybe you can, join this sort of crazy lottery thing.
Yeah.
It used to, I think we think of it as predestiny, but most of American history and most of the world history, what you wanted to do is come out of the right womb. You want to be born rich.
Yep.
And there was a time where we invested in people through taxing rich people and investing in them through education, roads, small businesses, stuff like that, where actually you could, in fact, move up your economic station if you worked hard and all those things. And it is now no longer true. we are now going back to a time where actually, if you had your choice between having opportunity or being born to the right person, you would choose being born to the right person. And that doesn't just mean rich people, it means being born 20 years ago when you could afford housing. Right?
Right.
Like just really simple stuff like that. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just without any control, it's become untethered to reality. This is,
Yep.
no offense to your house, I'm sure it's lovely, but I don't think it's dumb. I don't think you've done anything to increase that size value. It's not inherent.
Yep.
It's an out of control.
Yep.
It's what happens when systems are broken.
And we certainly we did do renovations, but we didn't do triple, you know, and
Yeah.
and it was, also we even in 2013 we bought a house that was a little too small for our family, and to talk about the lottery again, like my husband knows how to design and build houses. That's what he does for a living. And so we knew that we could renovate to some extent. But you shouldn't have to have, all of these things fall perfectly in place so that you can build wealth, basically.
So let's talk a couple things, like what are some of the reforms housing wise that you would like to see? And you touched on I know that you guys have done some really amazing things in terms of your house being environmentally really on the sort of cusp of what is possible. Can you talk about both of those, the housing policies that you are in favor of, and then maybe some of this environmental stuff related to housing?
Yeah. So one thing that I think would be helpful in terms of just making sure that we are supporting affordable housing in terms of building housing, because having units is often a struggle in this area. And Waltham is one of those suburbs that we're very flat, and we don't have the density that some of the other suburbs have. And I think that there are ways to work with the local municipalities to think about zoning, inclusionary zoning, and to be able to have some areas of higher density where you're able to be close to public transportation, able to be close to city centers where there's shopping and local businesses. We have Moody Street here in Waltham, which is just an amazing place. If you haven't been here, you should come, especially now because Moody Street is blocked off to cars, and so it's all just dining and pedestrians and shopping. Nice. And it's wonderful. And something that we started in the pandemic, and we've just kept going because everybody really likes it. And so there are some things like that inclusionary zoning and the state allowing municipalities to think about it in ways that's best for each municipality. We're not all the same. And then also there are things like we've talked recently about real estate transfer fees. We have a lot of development going on in Waltham. I think people misunderstand sometimes the real estate transfer fee policy that's being put forth. We're talking predominantly about non-owner occupied developments, and that when they sell that, I'm blanking on the exact percentage, but the percentage is a small fee that I want to say it's like 4.5% or something like that, goes into an affordable housing fund. I think
it depends on the city. I know in Somerville it's 1%. So I think the law for the city can be,
yeah,
what the city chooses.
Right. Okay. And so, those kinds of things seem to me to sort of be no-brainers, and yet we have our current incumbent has voted against both of those things. So I don't understand that, given the concerns of the people that I'm talking to in Waltham. Yeah. And I think connected to that, like I said, we have a lot of development. We have both big development, but we also have a lot of residential development. There's a growing population of older houses, and the developers come in, knock it down. Suddenly you have all this sequestered carbon out in, because you've just knocked down a house. And they're building, code minimum, construction grade houses and selling them for $1 million.
And I wish $1 million was like hypothetical, like
I know.
not hypothetical.
Yeah.
What is the word? I wish it was like a rhetorical, not rhetorical, the idiom, $1 million. No, you actually mean like $1 million,
No,
million and a half,
actually
like
$1 million.
literal $1 million.
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. And so you have this, it's affecting housing prices. It's affecting the availability of affordable housing. And it's also contributing to destroying our environment.
Yeah.
You mentioned the renovations that we did. So my husband is a builder who specializes in energy efficient renovations and passive house technology. So net zero or net positive building. We right now have a net positive house. So we have solar panels and we create more energy than we use. There are a lot of things about that technology that don't necessarily, it's not like a completely new way of building. It's that there are some old sort of traditional things. We used to always say like a house needs to breathe. That's the thing that, in the construction, well, the house needs to breathe, no, it doesn't. The humans need to breathe. And so you have to have air exchange, but the house should be as tight as possible. Like those are fairly easy things in terms of training the workforce, to be able to think about those things in a different way. The materials are becoming easier and easier to find and more affordable, but there are some things that we can do as a state in terms of having incentives for those kinds of building, and also for changing our building codes so that all of our new construction is at the minimum 100% renewable and net zero. There's no reason not to do it.
Amazing. I wish we could talk. There's so many other things we wanted to talk about with you.
Yeah.
People will have to find you at the doors. That's how
Yes, they will.
hear about all the other stuff that we'd want to talk about with you. Wonderful to have you, Heather. Can you tell people how they can find you on the web, how they can get involved in your campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is www.heather4waltham, all spelled out, .com. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Heather4, the number 4, Waltham. We are having actually this Sunday, June 5th. I'm just trying to make June go away. Don't do that, Heather. But June 5th, we're having our big sort of volunteer kickoff. And we'll be meeting, doing some training, hitting the doors, and then having a barbecue back here at our house to celebrate the volunteers that make all of these things happen. And you can sign up via the website, and we'll contact you to get involved. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful. We're so excited about your campaign. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
And
you.
thanks everybody for listening. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you.